Imagine landing in a new country with your family, starting a new life, and then becoming a victim of a vicious scam. Research shows that this is the reality for more than half of new immigrants and newcomers to Canada. But why does it have to be this way? It really shouldn't. Our next session will dive into the complex landscape of newcomer threats. Here to share effective strategies to protect your money and data, please welcome Vice President and Head of Data Analytics and Fraud at Interac, Palash Thakur.
Thank you, Rashmi. Well, good afternoon, everybody. The best part is I cannot see beyond 3 rows because the light's right on my face. Anyways, my name is Palash Thakur. I'm the head of data analytics and fraud operations at Interac. And before I begin the presentation, let me start with a story. Now imagine you're a young student who's traveled all by themselves, thousands of miles away from their home, away from the family, in the hopes of pursuing higher education in Canada, in one of the reputed universities in Canada, and potentially calling Canada their future home. 1 year in, settled with student life, this person gets a call from a fraudster, from a scamster, who's pretending to be a customer service agent from their FI. Systems maintenance in progress. We need to reset your login ID. Guess what? You'll get an OTP. Can you just pass it on? And that's what they do. You know, this unsuspecting, vulnerable, gullible student, within 5 minutes, they lose a month and a half's worth of expenses, close to $300,000. Now, this is just one story. I have tons of them, of people that I know of, relatives, friends. And I'm sure this is not an isolated incident, and all of us here have been part of it or somehow have been impacted, and we have had multiple stories that we can share. Now, by show of hands, how many of us here have got one of those calls, weird-looking texts? Yeah, I saw a hand popping up there, right there. You know, asking to claim a refund, pay a parking ticket fine, or even pretending, someone calling up, pretending to be CRA, and that next thing that happens is you're going to get arrested for tax evasion. All too common, right? And there are sections of our society that are so unsuspecting, they're vulnerable, they're gullible to these frauds, just like newcomers and seniors. And now, being the data guy, all right, let me see if this works. Next slide, if someone can roll it, because this is not working, obviously. Nope. Okay. Can someone roll the slides? Oh, there you go. Perfect. So being the data guy, I have to start with some stats, right? And we all know financial crime numbers are skyrocketing. The Canadian Anti-Fraud Center, CAFC, estimates that only 5 to 10% of actual fraud is reported. And in 2023, that amounted to just over $500 million. So if you do the math, be with me for a second, you're talking about fraud in the range of $6 to $11 billion. That is a huge number. Can you imagine the magnitude of this issue we are facing today in Canada? And if you look at this number, it is probably more than GDPs of some countries. So as record number of immigrants arrive in Canada, we've had close to 500,000 newcomers last year. These scammers and fraudsters, they're preying on these newcomers, who are trying to navigate an unfamiliar financial landscape. At Interac, we did a recent study, a survey, just reinforcing that high scam rates are taking a toll on the newcomers and the financial fortitude of these newcomers. The research we looked at late last year highlighted that more than half of the newcomer families have been targeted by fraud. That's a staggering number. Like 70% of new Canadians feel they are more susceptible to financial scams than the general population, right? And nearly 6 in 10 folks, they feel that they're being targeted, and it makes them very uncomfortable and less financially confident as they move on in their lives. There are a lot of other numbers. I wouldn't really go into all the details, but one thing that was very common through the survey was that a lot of them felt very uncomfortable. They felt they were victims of fraud, and they didn't know what to do. And they were all up for doing new trainings or learning more about where to report fraud, right? So about a victim of financial scam, about 20% of them. So that's a big number as well. And then about 3/4 of them, they indicated that they wanted to get some training, formal training. Now, these fraud incidents, they go reported for various reasons: lack of awareness, lack of education. They don't know where to and who to reach out to. And personally, I would say for newcomers and for immigrants, it's also a stigma and the shame of being ripped off their finances. So while newcomers and immigrants are disproportionately targeted, we all are vulnerable to this. So and I think we all have a role to play when it comes to providing advice and build financial literacy and financial confidence in each one of us and spread the news, right? Okay, how can we build financial confidence in newcomers? So at Interac, I think we believe in a four-pronged approach: consumer awareness and fraud prevention education. I think it is crucial that reputed firms, government, and trusted brands like Interac, we need to bring visibility. The onus is on us to bring visibility to the realities of fraud and scams, particularly against newcomers. Now, fraud prevention education is also key to this, especially practicing safe hygiene when it comes to online activities and stuff. And I think at the end of the day, you need to inculcate how can newcomers or immigrants protect themselves online, right? Which includes the best practices for scrutinizing potential scams and even combating new fraud. Partnerships are very common and very important. So Interac has partnered with a couple of agencies like Access Employment and Conscious Economics to really develop content for training and financial literacy. So that's another big point that we see. And finally, I think it is on us to report to the authorities, right? It is very important that if you are a victim of fraud, you report to the authorities like CAFC, the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center, or any other law enforcement agencies, because if you may not have been able to prevent the fraud on yourself, but then you can probably help prevent further fraud, right? So in addition to all of this, we also leverage the power of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data to combat fraud, detect fraud across our core products like e-transfer and debit. Some tips for staying safe online. I mean, as a trusted resource for Canadians to really defend themselves against fraud, Interac recommends using the 3S approach, and many of you are familiar with this. Stop, scrutinize, and speak out. So similar to a physical self-defense or in a boxing game, right? You want to really see the movement of your opponent. You have to pause, you have to stop, you have to really think about your next move. And that is what we are asking. Don't pick up that phone call if you see an unknown number. Don't pick up that, click on that link that you get through messages, right, if you're unfamiliar with it. So very important to scrutinize those signs. And similar to how someone has been trained in self-defense, they call for help when they are in danger, speak out. Reach out to folks who can help you and defend yourself. So if you see something, I say something. And validate and report any of these incidents to law enforcement agencies or even to organizations like CAFC, right? I'll keep harping on that. One thing that we have done at Interac is, it's becoming all too common experience for newcomers when it comes to fraud. So as I mentioned, we have partnered with Conscious Economics. So we have created a digital learning platform or a program that teaches financial literacy and fraud prevention techniques to newcomers, as well as international students. And as they get used to life in Canada, we need to really build their financial confidence in transacting in new ways. Using, say, the Interac products, be it e-transfer or debit. We need to instill that confidence in them that they are safe. And finally, I would say, it is super important that we not only focus on knowing the trends that come with the evolving trends that come with fraud. So it is an important thing that we need to know where is fraud going, what are we doing about it, and how do we keep ourselves educated. Literacy is important. And I would say, it's an organized crime. So fight against it. Fraudsters are getting sophisticated, right? There is a collective responsibility on all of us to combat fraud. And finally, I would say report. I'll keep harping on that report. If you face fraud, report fraud, and stay safe and remain vigilant. I think it is okay to be paranoid. That brings it to my conclusion, and thank you for having me here. It's been a pleasure.